perhaps,
God of Israel. Why
perhaps
did
you should
refer
calm
to
down
God
and
of
take a
Israel?
breath.
You did God of Abraham.
I'm not your enemy here,
I never
but
said
it seems
you
like
are.
you're.
All
You
right,
sound agitated. You sound agitated.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Rabbi Asher, you said earlier about Christianity that essentially did I get it right? It's the same, but there's three things with Christianity that is contrary to Judaism. One of them is the Immaculate Conception.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is the human vicarious atonement, and the other one is the human God concept.
Right.
So is that Avodah Zarah or is that
So the vast majority of rabbis would say it is idolatry. However, when I said that these concepts are Jewish, I'm not saying they're concepts justified by the Torah, but they're essentially ideas that appear in Jewish literature. For example, there's notions of people who do not sin in Jewish literature. They appear in what's called Midrash and Agadah. There's tales, even in modern day Judaism nowadays, we have the notion of a Tzaddik. A Kabbalistic notion of what we call a Tzaddik is essentially someone who doesn't sin. Now, there's people who disagree, like the Rambam. According to the Rambam, a Tzaddik, i.e. a righteous person, is someone whose good deeds outweigh his bad deeds. The notion of a righteous man dying for the generation and taking the sins away from the generation, the idea actually does appear in rabbinic literature. Jews don't believe this in mass, but these ideas are there. In terms of God being a man or embodying a man for 30 years, I think it's a foolish idea. I don't think it's an idolatrous idea. And there's rabbis, for example, like the Meiri, who will agree with me, but then there's rabbis like the Rambam who will disagree with me. So in terms of what Jews believe nowadays, they believe Christianity is completely foreign and it's fully idolatry. But that wasn't always a sentiment throughout Jewish history.
Can I just ask him a question to just quickly off what he just said? You said God embodying a man for 30 years is foolish. Okay, what if God embodied a man for a few days in Genesis? Is that foolish?
The reason why I think it's foolish is not necessarily because I don't believe that God could embody a man, because like you said correctly, there's instances in the Jewish Bible that God actually does embody man. Now, there's many rabbis who disagree with that and will say, well, that didn't really happen. They'll say that this occurred in a vision.
It wasn't a vision. It wasn't a vision.
Why are you arguing with me? I'm just telling you what Maimonides says. So Maimonides says that any type of anthropomorphic understanding of God is in some way limiting to his nature. I'm not saying I agree with him. I'm just telling you what he says. I agree with you that God, if he wanted to embody a man, he could. He could. I'm trying to be fair to the text and bring you every different understanding. Okay, I think Christianity is ultimately foolish because I think that philosophy, now this is personal. I actually believe a Christian, if he believes in what I call the oral law and the written law, could be validated by God as a righteous person, this and that, fine. It doesn't bother me who you think the Messiah happens to be, as long as
Why the oral law?
Well, it's because the Torah itself sanctions what we call the oral law.
You say it does, but if somebody, what do you guys call that? Derabanan? I believe that what's Derabanan is not de Oraita.
Right.
Those are two distinct things. One of them is clearly laid out in the Tanakh, and the other one is something that you guys developed later.
I agree.
To try to give authority to the rabbis, even going so far to saying that the prophets themselves were rabbis. So I have a disagreement with you on that. But
let me explain that a little bit further. Deuteronomy chapter 17 gives the authority to the court. God says not to stray from the right or to the left of what in the Torah they're known as elders, i.e. Zakanim, the Ante Knesset Gedolah, the men of the Great Assembly later on, the Sanhedrin later on, that this court had authority. We even see that in the New Testament, they treated this court with authority because they had the authority to create civil law amongst Israel. And these laws developed by the Sanhedrin, by these group of elders. The Torah tells Moses to establish a court of 70 elders and 71 with himself. That is the same image of the court throughout Jewish history. they are sanctioned by God. I'm not saying that there is no distinction between rabbinic law and Torah law. I would never say that. Torah law is Torah law, but what we call the oral law, which is essentially rabbinic law, that's sanctioned from the Torah. And even though it's still man-made, we're still obligated to keep it by God. So I think it's more of a sophisticated idea that even though it's fully man-made, God expects us, for the sake of consensus, at least in the land of Israel, to be under their authority.
Who mandates it?
God.
Okay, says it.
Rabbi,
Deuteronomy chapter 17.
Rabbi,
Okay.
I just want to make something clear. Just because I disagree with certain things you say as a Jew, I don't agree with whatever political idea you have or religious idea you have, does not mean I do have hate for Jews like some Jews claim. Okay? So, like you said, okay, you're not my enemy. I never took you for an enemy. You and your brother might agree and disagree on anything. Does that make you and your brother enemies and you're going to go kill each other? I don't think so.
All right. I mean, if you think that we're lying about something, that could encourage you to possibly harm us in the future. I mean, Christians have harmed Jews in the past because they felt they were intentionally lying.
Wait a second. Hold on a second. You call yourself you were a Christian before?
Yes.
Can you show me anywhere in the Bible? I mean, literally, you and the Muslims are carbon copy. Can you show me anywhere in the Bible, in the New Testament, say go kill those who do not believe in Christ? Or anything in reference to that?
Okay, so history
Can you
itself
show me
tells
any
you.
statement that says that? Yes or no?
I mean, that's a silly argument. Clearly,
No,
the New
it's not a
Testament doesn't
silly
say
argument.
this. But Christians have done it in the past. That's my point.
Don't. Either you give me an answer or you don't. You
You're
guys
very
take
emotional.
what people do and then blame it on Christianity. I could be a Christian, bad Christian. Does that mean Christianity is bad?
Throughout history, Jews have been killed in the name of Christ, correct?
Who did that? Is the
Okay.
Bible telling us to do that or
I'm
the
not
people
saying
do that?
Oh man, I mean, you're getting too emotional.
No, I get emotional because now you're carbon copy telling a lie and you call yourself you are a Christian? I
I'm
don't
telling
think
a
you
lie
ever
about the
know what
Crusades?
Christianity is.
What?
I don't think you know what Christianity is to begin with.
I
Making
know what
such a
Christianity
lie.
is. Okay.
He was a Christian, dude, who converted to Judaism.
What
So
Christian will tell
Christianity
you that kind of
is
garbage?
what Christians do. The New Testament is separate to what Christians do, just like I'm willing to say that what the Torah teaches, many times it's separate to what Jews actually do. Fine.
So
There's a
if
cultural aspect.
if the Christians do wrong, that means Christianity is bad?
Yes, actually. Christianity, not the New Testament. Of course, the New Testament never told you to go out and kill people. However,
Okay, so-
in spite of the
so
New
you're-
Testament, Christians
So
did
do
that.
you understand? Do you see what I'm
You're
going
making,
to
you're making what, dude? He's making a distinction between the book, the scriptures, and the religion.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying, Rabbi?
Yes.
Wait a second.
The
Wait
religion-
a second. What does that supposed to mean? Is there anything in my faith that tells me go kill?
No, that's what he's saying. What, dude? He's saying that
So-
the scriptures don't teach you to do that. But
Exactly. So what people
who
do.
have the name of Christian
So
did
what
those.
people do does not mean Christianity, does not mean the faith is wrong. It makes the person wrong.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Therefore, Christianity becomes the victim of the people.
So there's a distinction between the religion and the 27 books of the New Testament.
No, I think that's the distinction that you have within Judaism. You can't equate the two, right? To be a follower of Christ is the New Testament. You want to make that distinction because you want to say that you follow an oral law, which is
by the
literally
simple
in
fact-
contradiction to the Torah.
by
So
the simple
you
fact-
want to do that.
So the simple fact that there are many denominations in Christianity, I'm pretty sure you would acknowledge that every one of those denominations that
What
you
is this-
don't belong to do not resemble the message in the New Testament, correct?
No,
So-
I don't. No.
So if you were a Christian, a Catholic Christian in the 12th century,
Bro, a Christian is a Christian. Don't use denomination's name to make a point that is wrong.
all right, so
We're
Yeah.
talking. We're
If the
talking
popes-
about
if the Pope told
Rabbi,
you,
listen.
no, hold on. Well, let me finish. Let me finish.
I'm not going to let you finish.
And it's not, and this isn't helping you because modern Judaism is radically different than what Judaism was before, anyways. So
I'm not standing
if you
up for
want to start
Judaism by
talking
making a
about
statement.
Catholicism,
I
you're
made the
just going to make
statement early.
no.
Okay. Well, you don't consider
No, you're
Catholics
just
Christians then, right?
Huh?
Do you consider Catholics Christians?
Yes, I do.
Do you consider the tenets of Catholicism in line with the tenets of the New Testament?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Then you wouldn't have no issue with someone listening to the Pope in the 12th century and getting them to attack Muslims and attack Jews just because they weren't.
Well, I would say that
Jesus.
I would say that that's out of line with what the New Testament teaches.
Okay, obviously, that's my point.
So what is your point?
My point is that there's a difference between the religion of Christianity and all its hundreds and thousands of denominations and what literally appears in the 27th.
Are there hundreds
The denominations have nothing to do with the individuals.
That's
moron.
the religion. That's
Rabbi.
The okay, all right.
Rabbi, are there hundreds and Rabbi, are there
Next
tons
question.
of different Rabbi? Are there tons of different kinds of Jews? Yes. So what is your point? Is rabbinical Judaism today the same as it was around the time of Christ? No.
All right, they muted me. Okay. I think that Christians in this room should police other Christians because they're making Christianity look backward and primitive.
Okay, hang on. Rabbi, earlier you were saying that no Jew would name their son after their mother, right?
No, I never said that. Name? What do you mean? Name their son after their mother?
Yeah, so you wouldn't be Rabbi Asher ben Mary, right?
No, I said that that's only used during what's called Mishaberach, which means when someone's praying for a sick person, the Jewish tradition is that we beseech God in their behalf by the name of their mother. But it's not used for religious reasons outside of that.
Okay, so a Jewish son would never be Ben Sarah, Ben Deborah.
No, of course he would be that legally. I mean, legally, like Ben means son of, right?
That wouldn't
so
be
Abraham Vesara, like Abraham and Sarah. But in terms of in a religious context, it's never used.
All right. So here, let me, because I don't want to belabor the issue. So when we get to the Quran has Jesus being named son of Mary, Isa ibn Maryam. That's foreign to Jewish custom. Not only to Jewish custom, but pretty much to any Middle Eastern traditions. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all. Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, my question, and it probably relates to what you just brought up. I believe it was Cyrus.
Cyrus.
Wasn't he called the Mashiach of Adonai?
Well, it was called the Anointed of the Lord. Yeah.
Okay, and Mashiach is anointed, or also translated as Messiah, correct?
I mean, it only means anointed. I mean, Messiah is just an
anointed, right?
Anglicized form of Mashiach. Yeah.
Okay, so it was Cyrus. Was he Yahudi? Or was he?
No.
Okay, so how is that possible? To call like him anointed? Is it the same type of anointing as Malek David?
No.
Okay.
So King David was anointed physically with oil by the prophet Samuel. Anointed in the context of Cyrus is that God used Cyrus to help bring the Jews out of Babylon and back into Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Cyrus enacted a decree that Jews should be allowed to return to the land of Israel to build their temple. So God used him in that capacity.
So was he? You used the religion. I know what you were saying about Jewish became a religious term.
Mm-hmm.
So according to the religious term, would he be considered a Jewish person or no?
Not.
Is he Gior? Is he what's the terminology?
We don't know much about him for me to say that he didn't convert to Judaism, I don't know. I mean, there's actually a theory that he may have been, there's an incorrect theory that he would have been a descendant from Esther, but the Esther story actually comes after that. But no, he never converted to Judaism as far as we know. But it says that he's God's anointed. That means in that context that God used him for a certain purpose.
Okay, so I'm just trying to reconcile, and I know you're not, from what I know about you, you're not a radical Jew, but they're outside of Judaism. They are God-fearers that believe in God apart from being, within Judaism.
Yeah, I mean, they're called Noahides.
Okay. All right. And in regards to what I believe DL had mentioned about Jesus, I want to put this in context. Correct me if I'm wrong in regards to what the Talmud says, but I believe in the Talmud there's a section where they talk about Eshul, and they say that his mother was I want to think. I think
prostitute.
Yes.
Well, it says a hairdresser one. It says a prostitute another.
Okay. Yeah. So when the Quran came out, this was a well-known saying, and they said that this was applied to the mother of Jesus. So the Quran clears her of this saying and calls her, a virgin when she, in other words, before she had her son, her child, she was a virgin. She wasn't a prostitute. And they also calls Jesus, not Jesus, they use the word, and the Arabic word, Isa ibn Maryam, that it makes a distinction, the son of Mary. And then it also says Isa al-Masih, which is Mashiach or Messiah. Mm-hmm. So I think, in me knowing a little bit about Judaism, studying it for a few years, I think that that's how those two coincide together.
Yeah. But so the individual in the Talmud that appears as Yeshua Notzri, there's many people who say that it's not the same individual, because if it is, this guy existed 250 years before the Jesus described in the Gospels. I mean, there's even one instance that it's tied to someone named Yeshua ben Prachia, which is a rabbi who had a student that was coming up with different ideas, and it also doesn't line up with that individual. But there's different stories that aren't fully monolithic. I think there's one statement that says that she's a hairdresser, and another statement that says that she had sex with a Roman soldier. Yeah, but it's not necessarily talking about Jesus. I mean, most people don't read that in the Jewish world as this is talking about Jesus. And as a matter of fact, this individual is, in one instance in the Talmud, is killed by the Sanhedrin via strangulation. It might be the same person, but it's not agreed upon by everyone that it's for sure Jesus.
The parallels are strong, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And, I want to add that the Quran, what the Quran is making reference to, has nothing to do with the Jews at the time of Jesus at all. It's later, rabbinical traditions that were saying that. They were written down in the Talmud. So nobody was ever, there was nothing to clear Jesus up at all. The Quran just doesn't know what it's talking about. It doesn't know the distinction between the scriptures of the Tanakh and the scriptures of the writings of the Talmud. So it's all over the place anyway.
But
actually, you're wrong. The Quran took too much from the Talmud.
Yeah, no, I know that, but it doesn't know the distinction. So, for instance, in Al-Ma'idah, ayah 32, you have Allah supposedly saying, "And we decreed for the Jews." Then he proceeds to talk about whoever kills, one person kills all of humanity. Whoever saves all of humanity. So where did he decree that at? It's not in the Talmud. It's in the Talmud. It's in Sanhedrin. So he's basically sanctioning the Talmud as a source of wahi. So he doesn't know the difference, because that was never decreed by any prophet in the Tanakh. We find that in the Talmud. So that's what I'm saying. The Quran doesn't know the distinction between these things. Muhammad didn't know the difference.
The thing is, in Arabia, there were Talmudic Jews that existed in Arabia, rabbinic Jews. And according to what the rabbi said, I believe he could have explained himself, but the oral Torah comes from the book of the authority for it from the book of Deuteronomy, when the 70 elders went up with Moses. And the people say that it was only reduced to writing, I believe, maybe in around 300 CE. But are you under the understanding that it was never written down before that? DL?
Yeah, it never was.
Yeah, there were notes like floating around, but the understanding was that it wasn't. I mean, clearly that we can't prove if it was or it wasn't. But the Mishnah, it was compiled by someone named Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, and what he did was that he gathered everyone's notes and everyone's sayings of what they remember the court saying, and then created or compiled the Mishnah.
Around what year?
I mean, that's what the tradition teaches you.
Around what year, Rabbi Asher?
200 AD for the Tanaim and the Mishnah, right?
No, that's when they lived, but when the Mishnah was actually written, hold on, let me look it up. I'm pretty sure it's around, because the last Sanhedrin.
It was written around 200.
And now this is a question, and because if it wasn't written down into 200, was it remembered as like in a poetic form, like people remember songs and they were able to recite it from one person to the other for generations?
No. So the vast majority of rabbinic laws changed throughout the centuries. Like one court could override the rulings of another court. Now, there's some rulings that are set in stone, but the vast majority of what's called takanas and gezeras, like positive and negative rabbinic commands, these things could change. This is one reason why it was never supposedly written down, because it was meant to be fluid. And
yeah, but my question is, like, okay, let's say if we're during, I don't know, 1st century BCE, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the rulings were at that time, how did people know what they were if they weren't written down? Did they memorize them like it was a song, or how do you record it?
Even the Rambam writes in his introduction that there were notes. Like people had notes of these laws, but it wasn't compiled like one book. The Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who was the compiler of the Mishnah, was also the Nasi of the Sanhedrin. So he was at that time the head of the body who was able to modify rabbinic law, because the Sanhedrin is there's many different Sanhedrins, but the Great Sanhedrin was a court of 70, but the 71st individual, who's in some way sitting in the seat of Moses, is the head of the Sanhedrin, and he's the one who presides over the rulings. He would have known the vast majority of the laws, but the vast majority of the laws are not what appear in the Talmud. They're what appear in the Mishnah, which is a lot smaller. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people think that, how can they memorize the whole Talmud? Well, they can't. But the Talmud is a commentary, i.e. the Gemara is the commentary to the Mishnah.
It's over 4 million words.